Hey guys, tonight we're leaving the modern world behind and stepping into the blinding, baking heat of the Egyptian sun. Picture this. It's pre-dawn and your eyes flutter open not to the sound of an alarm, but to the distant, desperate braying of a donkey and the faint, ever-present smell of baking bread and something else. Something earthy and muddy. You're not in your comfortable bed. You're curled on a simple reed mat, laid over a hard, packed dirt floor. The air is already warm, thick with dust motes dancing in the first slivers of light, cutting through the single small window of your one-room house. And you, with your 21st century love of air conditioning and bottled water, would absolutely not survive the breakfast menu, let alone the day ahead. Seriously, your microbiome would wave the white flag before you even finished your morning. Well, you'll see. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always wild to picture you all, scattered across the globe, all tuning into the same ancient story. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. That hard floor is your first reality check. There's no mattress, no springs, just you, a thin mat, and the ground. Every slight movement is a reminder of where you are. As you sit up, the world swims for a second. Not from sleep, but from the sheer oppressive heat that has already settled in the room, despite it being barely dawn. You're wearing a simple knee-length linen shift that feels both cool and irritatingly rough against your skin. Your mouth tastes like last night's garlic and dust. Outside, the village is coming to life with a quiet, purposeful rhythm. You can hear the rhythmic thump, thump, thump from a few houses down, a sound as familiar as your own heartbeat. That's the sound of grain being ground. That's the sound of your first job of the day waiting for you. You stretch, your back already protesting, and your stomach lets out a low grumble. The day hasn't even properly begun, and every fiber of your being is already yearning for its end. This isn't a life of pyramids and gold. This is the foundation those things were built on. This is the grit, and you're about to get very, very acquainted with it. Historians still debate the average caloric intake of a laboring woman like you, but one thing is certain. You'd burn through every single calorie before the morning was over. The sun hasn't even cleared the horizon, and you're already behind. Welcome to the grind, literally. That thump, thump, thump sound isn't just background noise. It's a summons. It's the village heartbeat, and your place is right in the middle of it. You push yourself up from the mat, your joints creaking a protest that feels far too old for your years, and you join the quiet stream of women, all moving toward the same destination, the grinding stones. Your tool for the next few hours isn't anything fancy. It's a simple saddle quern, a large, slightly concave slab of hard stone, and a smaller, heavier handstone. You sit on your heels behind it, your knees already complaining about the position they'll be locked in for hours. Another woman pours a pile of golden emmer wheat onto the slab, and you get to work. You grip the handstone and begin rocking it back and forth, crushing the grains against the base stone. It's a motion that seems simple but is deceptively brutal on your wrists, your shoulders, your back. Thump, slide, thump, slide. Within minutes, a fine golden dust begins to coat everything. Your hands, your arms, your simple linen dress, your face. You can taste it in the air, gritty and dry at the back of your throat. You blink against it, your eyelashes becoming heavy with the powder. This isn't some artisanal, organic, farm-to-table experience. It's sheer, monotonous, bone-wearying labor. The goal is to produce enough flour for the day's bread, the absolute staple of existence. And here's a fun, slightly horrifying fact you didn't know, that flour wasn't just flour. The constant grinding wore tiny slivers of stone off the quern, mixing them into your meal. Your daily bread was literally laced with grit, slowly wearing down your teeth with every mouthful. Archaeologists examining ancient Egyptian skeletons can literally see the telltale grooves and abrasions on teeth from a lifetime of eating this bread. You're not just making food, you're slowly sanding down your own smile. The sun climbs higher, and the heat in the small, crowded work area becomes a physical weight. Sweat trickles down your temple, cutting clean lines through the layer of dust on your skin. There's no conversation. Just the shared rhythmic groan of stone on stone and the labored breathing of a dozen women doing the same relentless task. You don't get paid for this. You don't get a break. This is just what you do. It's your contribution to your family's survival, the unglamorous, essential engine of the household. Historians still argue about whether this was considered women's work or just work. But the evidence from tomb paintings and texts suggests this grinding, crushing, exhausting reality fell overwhelmingly on your shoulders. Each thump of the stone is a moment of your life, spent in the production of a simple loaf of bread. And this is only your first task before you even get to think about breakfast. The hunger in your stomach is now a sharp ache, but the pile of grain seems to barely shrink. The Nile might be the lifeblood of Egypt, but this grinding, gritty, exhausting labor is its heartbeat, and it's pounding right through you. Finally, when the sun is properly hung in the sky and your muscles are screaming a symphony of protest, the grinding stops. The pile of grain has been transformed into a mound of coarse, tawny flour, and your reward is breakfast. Let's not imagine a lavish spread. You brush the worst of the stone dust from your hands and arms, a mostly futile effort, and move to a low fire where a few flat, round discs of bread are already baking on a hot stone. This isn't the fluffy, leavened bread you're used to. This is ish baladi, a dense, flat, unleavened bread that's more like a cracker or a hardtack. You break off a piece. It's tough, it's chewy, and you can actually feel the gritty texture of that stone-ground flour between your teeth. It's a stark, crunching reminder of your morning's labor with every single bite. This isn't a meal you sit down to enjoy. You eat standing up quickly, fuel for the day rather than a moment of pleasure. Along with the bread, there's a handful of pungent onions, their sharp, acrid taste cutting through the dust in your mouth, and a few dried dates, their intense sweetness a tiny, fleeting luxury in an otherwise brutally utilitarian meal. You wash it down with water from a clay jar. The water is warm and has a distinct muddy taste from the Nile, a flavor so common you barely notice it anymore. And here's a bizarre, unsettling fact you didn't know: that water, the very source of life, was also a source of constant low-grade illness. The Nile was home to parasites like schistosomiasis, and drinking its water, even stored, meant you were likely hosting unwanted guests in your body, causing the chronic stomach pains and weakness that were just a normal part of life for everyone around you. Historians examining mummies find evidence of these parasites all the time. So your breakfast isn't just gritty. It's also probably swimming with microscopic worms. Bon appétit. You finish your meager meal, your hunger only partially satisfied. The bread sits like a stone in your stomach. There's no coffee, no orange juice, no second helping. This is it. This is the fuel that has to power you through the rest of the day's crushing labor. You glance at the other women, their faces also smudged with dust, their movements equally tired. There's no conversation about the food. It's just sustenance. It's functional. It's a quick pit stop before you're thrown back into the relentless grind of survival. The sun is already climbing higher, its heat intensifying, promising to make every subsequent task even more grueling. Breakfast is over. The real work is about to begin. With the gritty taste of bread still on your tongue, you're herded along with the other women out of the village and toward the lifeblood of Egypt itself, the fields. The air shimmers with heat, and the black fertile soil, still damp from the recent inundation, squelches under your bare feet. It's rich and cool between your toes, a small mercy against the growing furnace of the day. Before you stretches a vast flat expanse of land, divided into neat basins by low mud brick walls, all waiting for the seeds that will hopefully feed the kingdom. Your lower back, already aching from hours at the grinding stone, gives a fresh throb of protest. You know this pain. This is bending pain. This is the pain of a day spent with your spine curved toward the earth, your face inches from the mud. You're handed a simple basket filled with emmer wheat seeds. The work is brutally simple. You bend at the waist, your body forming a right angle, and you scatter seeds into the rich, dark mud. Bend, scatter, step, bend, scatter, step. It's a rhythmic, hypnotic, and utterly back-breaking cycle. The sun beats down on the back of your neck, and sweat drips off your nose, creating tiny dark spots on the soil. There are no hats, no sunscreen. Your skin, already tanned and leathery from a lifetime of this, absorbs the punishment. Flies, attracted to the moisture and the people, buzz incessantly around your face. The woman next to you mutters a quiet prayer to Renenutet, the cobra goddess of the harvest, asking for her blessing and for strength. You don't have the breath to join in, and here's a fact that's often glossed over in paintings of idyllic farm scenes. This wasn't just women's work. It was everyone's work during the crucial planting and harvest seasons. But you weren't just planting. You were also part of the human chain that managed the irrigation. You'd spend hours hauling heavy water pots from the canals to the fields using a chaudfeu, a counterweighted lever that was ingenious, but still required immense physical strength, straining your arms and shoulders until they burned. Historians still debate the division of this agricultural labor, but tomb scenes and texts make it clear. Your role was essential, unglamorous, and physically devastating. You were a living, breathing, aching part of the irrigation system, a cog in the machine that made Egypt's wealth possible. Each step, each scattered seed, each pot of water hauled, was a tiny investment in a future harvest you might not even get to enjoy fully. The grandeur of the pharaoh's granaries was built on a million moments of pain exactly like this one. That cool, rich mud squelching between your toes. It isn't just life-giving soil, it's also home to an invisible enemy. As you straighten up for a fleeting moment, trying to ease the screaming protest in your lower back, you feel it. A familiar, dull, cramping ache deep in your abdomen. It's not hunger, it's something else. A constant low-level companion you've known for years. This is the price of the Nile's gift, the very water that fertilizes these fields, that you drink from, that you wade through, is teeming with parasites. The most common, most unwelcome guest is a tiny worm called schistosoma, and it's already inside you. You can't see them, but you feel the effects every day. The abdominal pain, the lethargy that makes every task feel like you're moving. Through honey, the blood in your urine that turns it a faint, worrying pink. It's a condition so common it's just part of existence, a background hum of discomfort that everyone shares. There's no doctor to diagnose it, no medicine to cure it. You simply endure. You learn to live with the constant drain on your strength, the nagging pain that saps your energy long before the sun even reaches its peak. And here's a horrifyingly intimate fact you didn't know. The female parasite actually lays her eggs inside your blood vessels, and your body's attempts to fight them off cause the real damage, the inflammation, the pain, the slow, grinding toll on your organs. You are quite literally a battlefield for a microscopic war you didn't even know you were fighting. Historians and paleopathologists examining mummies find the calcified eggs of these parasites in kidneys and other tissues all the time, a silent testament to how universal this suffering was. It wasn't a dramatic plague that killed swiftly. It was a slow, debilitating leak of vitality that affected nearly everyone. So as you bend back down to the mud, the cramp in your gut tightening, you're not just fighting the sun and the hard labor. You're fighting an internal enemy you can't see, can't name, and can never escape. The Nile gives life, but it also takes a little piece of yours every single day. The grandeur of Egypt was built on more than grain and stone. It was built on the resilience of bodies constantly fighting a war they couldn't win. Suddenly, a sharp cry cuts through the rhythmic sounds of planting. It doesn't come from the fields, but from a small mud brick house at the edge of the village. It's a sound you know well, one that sends a cold jolt of fear through you despite the heat. It's the cry of a woman in labor. The work doesn't stop for you, the seeds must be sown, but your focus fractures. Your mind isn't on the wheat. It's with your neighbor Hetepheres inside that dark, hot room. She's been heavy with child for months, and now her time has come. There are no hospitals, no midwives with modern equipment. There is only old Merit, the village's unofficial wise woman, and a collection of prayers whispered to Bes and Taweret, the dwarf and hippo deities who guard mothers and infants. You can't see it, but you know the scene. The room is dark, the air thick with the smell of sweat and fear. Hetepheres is kneeling on a birthing brick, her body straining. Merit is there, offering sips of water and chanting old spells, her hands ready to catch the child. There are no painkillers, no sterile gloves. There is only raw primal effort and hope. The risks are terrifyingly real. Infection, hemorrhage, a baby that won't come out, any of these could be a death sentence. Childbirth is one of the most dangerous moments in your life, a high-stakes gamble where the price of failure is everything. Historians estimate maternal mortality rates were shockingly high, and every woman knows someone who didn't survive. And here's a heartbreaking, seldom mentioned truth. If things go wrong, there is very little anyone can actually do. Merit's knowledge is based on tradition and herb lore, not medical science. She might have a potion to try and slow bleeding, or a prayer to strengthen contractions, but her tools are desperately limited. The line between life and death in that room is terrifyingly thin. As you scatter another handful of seeds, your own abdomen clenches in a sympathetic spasm. Your work is backbreaking, but hers is life-giving, and it is infinitely more perilous. The entire village holds its breath, waiting for the sound that will signal the outcome. The fierce, healthy cry of a new life, or the devastating, hollow silence of loss. The fate of a family balances on a knife's edge in that small, dark house. The rhythmic, gut-level cry of a newborn suddenly cuts through the heavy air. It's a raw, furious sound, and a wave of palpable relief washes over the field. Hedda fears is safe. The baby is alive. The tension in your own shoulders, which you hadn't even realized was there, releases just a little. But the relief is short-lived. The work continues. Bent double, you see old Merritt emerge from the house later, her expression weary but satisfied. She's the closest thing you have to a healthcare professional, a repository of knowledge passed down through generations. She wasn't formally trained. She simply learned by doing, by watching, by surviving. Her medical toolkit isn't found in a bag. It's in her head and in the local environment. She knows which plants can ease a fever. Willow bark for pain, honey for wounds, a surprisingly effective antiseptic, though no one knows why. She knows how to set a simple bone, her hands firm and sure. But her methods are a mix of observation, guesswork, and deep-seated superstition. For every effective remedy, there are 10 that are pure placebo or outright dangerous. A poultice of moldy bread might actually help an infection, thanks to the primitive penicillin, but a chant to drive out a demonic spirit was just as likely to be prescribed for the same ailment. Her success rate is a shaky gamble, and her failures are quietly buried. She is both a lifeline and a reminder of how fragile life is, how thin the veil is between wellness and catastrophe. And here's a strange and sobering fact you didn't know. Much of a healer's knowledge was considered women's magic, Eka, and was often dismissed by the male-dominated temple and state bureaucracy. Their practical, hands-on experience with childbirth, wounds, and illness was vital to daily survival, yet it rarely received the respect given to the more theoretical medical texts written by male scribes. Historians still piece together their methods from scraps of evidence and hints in texts, realizing that while the grand physicians treated pharaohs, it was women like Merritt who kept the entire backbone of Egypt, its laborers and mothers, alive and functioning. She returns to her own plot of land now, her sacred duty done, her own back as bent and tired as yours. She is a hero without a monument, her victories measured in quiet breaths and survived sunrises. The piercing cry from the house doesn't stop. It's not the robust, angry squall of a healthy newborn. It's a thin, reedy, desperate sound that seems to get weaker with each passing hour. The relief that had briefly lightened the air curdles back into a thick dread. You know that sound. Everyone knows that sound. It's the sound of a struggle. Inside that dark room, the battle isn't over. The first victory was survival of the birth. The next, far more uncertain battle is the survival of the child itself. Infant mortality is a shadow that hangs over every cradle, a risk so common it's woven into the fabric of life itself. That tiny, fragile life is now fighting against a world it is profoundly unprepared for. The dangers are everywhere. A simple chill, a fever that comes on too fast, a difficulty feeding, any small thing can be a crisis. Old Merritt might try to administer a tiny drop of poppy juice to quiet the cries, a dangerous gamble between soothing and silencing the child forever. There are no antibiotics for infection, no IV fluids for dehydration. The mother, exhausted and bleeding, can only offer her breast and her warmth, praying to Isis for protection. The first few days are a precarious tightrope walk. The village continues its work, but a somber mood has settled. Each woman carries the memory of her own losses, the tiny graves dug at the edge of the desert. The joy of new life is always tempered by the acute awareness of how easily it can be extinguished. And here's a heartbreaking statistical reality. Historians estimate that perhaps a third of all children born in ancient Egypt died before their first birthday, and another third before they reached adulthood. Those who made it to age 10 had a good chance, but getting there was the hard part. This staggering loss wasn't a rare tragedy. It was a common, expected part of the human experience. It shaped everything: how families were formed, how mothers loved, how grief was processed. The constant presence of death made life both precious and painfully fragile. That faint, struggling cry from the house is the sound of the odds themselves, and they are never in the child's favor. The fieldwork continues, but each woman's heart is listening, measuring the silence between the cries, hoping against the grim statistics of their world. By the time the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the thin, reedy cry from the house has faded into an unsettling silence. The weight of that silence hangs heavier than the day's heat. No one speaks of it. No announcement is made. There is only the quiet, shared understanding that another small soul has lost its fight. You see Hetefiz's mother emerge, her face a mask of grim resignation, and begin to prepare a small bundle. The grief is a private, intimate thing, swallowed by the overwhelming necessity of daily survival. There will be no grand funeral, no elaborate tomb for this little one. A small pit will be dug at the edge of the settlement, away from the nourishing Nile, in the dry, sterile desert sand that preserves. The tiny body, perhaps wrapped in a piece of old linen, will be placed within, accompanied by a simple amulet or a small pottery offering, a plea to the gods for protection in the next life. Then the sand will be filled back in, and the world will move on. The unrelenting cycle of life and death continues, its rhythms as predictable as the flooding of the Nile. One life ends, and tomorrow, the grinding of grain will begin again at dawn. As you trudge back from the fields, your body is a single aching entity. The grit from the morning's grinding still lingers in the creases of your skin, mixing with the sweat and soil of the afternoon. You crave one thing above all else, to feel clean. But cleanliness here is a relative term. You stop by a large water jar stored in the shade of your house. The water is warm and still carries the distinct silty taste of the Nile. You cup your hands and splash it over your face and arms, the water turning muddy brown as it runs down your body. It's a token gesture. The dust and grime are ground in, a permanent patina of labor. You'll never truly feel the cool, refreshing cleanse of a modern shower. This is it. This is the extent of your ablutions. The feeling of grit under your fingernails and the film of dust on your skin are simply part of you, a physical testament to the day's work. And here's a fact that highlights the constant, low-grade struggle for health. This simple act of washing with Nile water while feeling refreshing might actually be reintroducing the very parasites you're trying to rinse away. The cycle is vicious and inescapable. The water that cleanses also contaminates. The river that gives life also harbors unseen threats. Historians studying dental calculus on skeletons find traces of silica from grinding stones and even tiny fibers from linen cloths, a literal embedding of daily life into the body itself. Your cleanliness, your health, your very body is a document of your labor and your environment, written in dust, grit, and microscopic organisms. You dry your hands on your linen dress, the rough fabric scraping against your skin, and step inside your dark single-room home. The day is over, but its physical residue remains. That film of dust and sweat you just tried to wash off, it's going to stay. And in this heat it's going to get pungent. Let's be real. Personal hygiene in ancient Egypt wasn't about smelling like a field of roses. It was about managing the olfactory assault of daily life. So you reach for your secret weapon, a small, unassuming alabaster jar. You pop the stopper, and a complex, heavy scent blooms into the air, a mix of myrrh, frankincense, and cinnamon suspended in a rich, oily base. This isn't frivolous perfume. It's social armor. You dip your fingers in the unguent and smooth it over your arms, your neck, behind your ears. The oil feels slick on your skin, a barrier against the world. The powerful fragrance quickly overpowers the scent of sweat and toil, creating a fragrant cloud around you that's far more pleasant than the alternative. This ritual isn't just about vanity, it's deeply practical. The oil helps protect your skin from the relentless drying sun and the harsh, dusty wind. But it's also a status symbol. Having access to these imported resins and spices, even in small amounts, marks you as a step above the absolute poorest. It's a tiny luxury, a small act of defiance against the grime and grit of existence. You feel marginally more human, less like a beast of burden as the rich scent envelops you. It's a sensory reminder that there is beauty and refinement in the world, even if your daily life is mostly defined by back-breaking labor. But here's the ironic, itchy truth you didn't know. All that fragrant oil and sweat creates the perfect, greasy environment for lice and nits to thrive in your hair and on your scalp. The very thing that makes you feel civilized and clean is also a 5-star resort for parasites. Everyone has them. Itching your head is as common and unconscious as breathing. The elaborate wigs worn by the wealthy weren't just fashion statements. They were a sophisticated solution to this itchy problem, keeping pests away from the natural hair underneath. For you, without that luxury, it's just another low-grade, constant annoyance to be endured. Historians find evidence of lice on ancient combs, and even in the hair of mummies. So as you sit in your home, smelling like a high-end marketplace, you're probably absently scratching an itch behind your ear. A small, nagging reminder that no matter how much you try to rise above it, the gritty reality of life always finds a way to, well, get under your skin. That simple linen shift you're wearing? It's seen better days. It's thin from countless washings in the Nile. Its once creamy color faded to a dull beige by the relentless sun. It's your entire wardrobe, really. You might own one other identical garment if you're lucky. There are no closets, no choices. You wear this until it wears out, and then you might get a new one, woven from the flax you helped to grow and process. The process of making clothes was another monumental task that fell largely on your shoulders. After the flax was harvested, you'd spend days retting it, soaking the stalks in water to rot away the woody parts. Then came the beating, the scraping, and the endless tedious spinning of the fibers into thread using a handheld spindle. Finally, you'd sit at a ground loom, painstakingly weaving the thread into cloth, one tedious row at a time. The entire process, from plant to garment, could take weeks of additional labor on top of everything else. The result is a fabric that is rough and stiff. There's no soft cotton here. Linen is durable and cool in the heat, but it chafes against your skin, especially where the rough seams rub against your shoulders and under your arms. There are no soft elastic waistbands, no comfortable shoes. You are barefoot, and the soles of your feet are tough as leather from a lifetime of walking on hot sand, sharp stones, and rough mud brick. Your clothing offers no protection from the elements, just a thin barrier between you and the sun, and a slightly less thin barrier for modesty. It's purely functional, and its function is to barely suffice. And here's a sartorial fact you probably didn't know. For all its simplicity, there were still unspoken rules. The quality and whiteness of your linen said a lot about your status. A laboring woman like you wore coarse, natural-colored linen. Finer, bleached white linen was reserved for the upper classes and priests. So your outfit wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a walking billboard announcing your place at the very bottom of the social ladder. Historians still debate how much fashion changed over centuries, but for you in your village it didn't change at all. Your great-grandmother dressed exactly like this, and if your daughter survives, she will too. There is no trend cycle here. There is only necessity, woven into every rough, scratchy thread. Feeling the weight of the day and the gritty film on your skin, you decide to seek a moment of peace. You leave your small home and walk toward the village's modest mud-brick shrine, dedicated to Hathor, the kind-eyed goddess of women, home, and motherhood. The air inside is cool and smells of old incense beer, and the faint, sweet scent of dried flowers left as offerings. It's a simple place. No grand columns or gold leaf, just a small statue of the goddess with cow ears and a gentle smile, illuminated by a single flickering oil lamp. You kneel on the hard-packed earth floor, the act itself a relief for your aching knees. You bow your head, but no profound words come. Your prayers are not eloquent. They are simple, desperate whispers from a place of exhaustion. You pray for strength to get through tomorrow. You pray for your children's health. You pray that the grinding stone breaks before your spirit does. You pray that the inundation is good this year. That's a direct line to divine customer service, and your list of complaints is long. You leave a small offering, a single, slightly withered date from your meager stores. It feels insignificant next to the lavish offerings depicted in tomb paintings, but it's all you can spare. The priestess, an older woman with kind eyes, nods at you in quiet understanding. She's seen this look of weary desperation 1,000 times. Here's a little-known fact. While the high priests in the great temples were men, many of the smaller local cults, especially those devoted to goddesses like Hathor or Bastet, were run by women. They were the ones who offered solace to the common people, who interpreted dreams, and who provided a rare listening ear. They were a crucial spiritual and social support system in a life that offered very little of either. Historians still debate how much comfort these daily devotions actually provided, but the evidence is in the sheer number of small, personal shrines and amulets found in even the humblest of homes. The gods were as ever-present as the dust. You didn't just pray at the shrine. You wore your faith, amulets of Bez for protection in childbirth, a tiny scarab for transformation and rebirth, all strung on a cord around your neck. As you rise to leave, your knees popping, you touch the small faience amulet at your throat. It's cool against your skin. You don't feel miraculously renewed, but you feel a tiny bit less alone. The goddess hasn't solved your problems, but for a few moments you had someone to whisper them to. And in a world this hard, that counts for something. You step back out into the blinding sun, the goddess's gentle stone gaze following you out into your relentless world. That single withered date you left in the dust at the foot of Hathor's statue felt like a huge sacrifice, and now your stomach clenches with a hollow pang, reminding you of its absence. Your meager breakfast is a distant memory, burned away by the sun and physical labor. It's time for the main meal of the day, but the word feast would be a cruel joke. You gather with your family around a low mat outside your home. The central dish is a shared pot of stew, a thick murky broth simmered for hours over a low fire. What's in it? Mostly onions and leeks, their pungent smell dominating the air. If you're lucky, there might be a few chunks of fish from the Nile, catfish or perch. But it's bony and often tastes of mud. Meat from cattle or goats is a fantasy, a luxury seen only during the rarest of festival days for the likes of you. You tear off another piece of that tough, gritty bread, your constant chewing companion, and use it to scoop up the stew. It's filling, which is its main purpose. The flavors are simple, earthy, and strong. You wash it down with more Nile water, or if you're fortunate, a thin, sour beer. This beer is nothing like the crafted IPAs of today. It's a thick, gruel-like substance, low in alcohol but calories, a vital source of nutrients and safer to drink than the often contaminated water. You eat quickly, silently, focused on replenishing the energy you've spent. There's no conversation about the taste. Food is fuel, not pleasure. The gnawing hunger subsides, replaced by a heavy, leaden feeling in your gut. And here's a dietary fact that shaped history. The constant consumption of this abrasive, stone-filled bread was absolutely brutal on your teeth. Archaeologists examining skeletal remains find extreme wear, cavities, and abscesses were horrifyingly common. A toothache wasn't a minor inconvenience. It could be a death sentence if it led to an infection that spread to the jaw or brain. There were no dentists, only perhaps a doctor, who might try to yank the offending tooth out with a pair of pliers, a terrifying and risky procedure. So you chew carefully, feeling the familiar grind of stone on enamel, hoping today isn't the day a tooth finally cracks. The meal ends. You are no longer hungry, but you are not satisfied. You are simply less empty, ready to face the few hours of daylight that remain. The struggle wasn't just to get food. It was to survive the food you managed to get. The simple meal sits heavily in your stomach, a dense ball of bread and onions, and your mind, freed for a moment from immediate survival, wanders to the one place it shouldn't, the world beyond your village. You've heard the stories, of course. Everyone has. The traders who come through with their donkeys laden with goods sometimes speak of it in hushed, awestruck tones. The royal capital, the great temples, cities where the buildings scrape the sky and the streets are paved with possibilities. You try to picture it. Women dressed in fine, bleached white linen, their hair adorned with gold, their arms heavy with lapis lazuli bracelets. You imagine them not grinding grain but being served honey cakes and roasted duck. You imagine a life where your back doesn't ache, where your hands are soft, where your biggest concern is which scent to wear, not how to silence your hungry child. It's a dangerous daydream. That life is as distant and unreachable as the moon. You are tethered to this plot of earth, to this grinding stone, to this endless cycle of planting and harvesting. There is no social mobility, no way to change your destiny. You were born a peasant and you will die one. Your value is measured in baskets of grain, not in talents or intelligence. The law reinforces it. The society is built upon it. That glittering world of courtiers and priests is a different universe, one you will only ever visit in your most fleeting and foolish thoughts. The fantasy is a sweet poison, making the reality of your rough dress, your dusty feet, and your empty pantry feel even more crushing. And here's a bitter historical truth. While ancient Egypt could be surprisingly meritocratic for men in certain roles like scribes or soldiers, that door was almost entirely closed for women. Your path was predetermined at birth. Historians still analyze legal documents and letters that show a woman's sphere of influence, while legally respected in matters of property, was overwhelmingly domestic. Any power or respect you had was earned within the confines of your household and village, not in the wider world. The grandeur of the pharaoh's court wasn't just built with your labor. It was built on the foundation of your fixed place in the world. You shake your head, brushing the treacherous daydream away like a bothersome fly. Such thoughts are a luxury you cannot afford. They make the grinding stone feel heavier. You focus instead on the tangible, the setting sun, the coolness of the earth beneath your feet, the few hours of rest that await. The other world can keep its gold. You have reality to contend with. A commotion near the village well pulls you from your thoughts. A scribe, looking impossibly clean in his white kilt, stands on a small crate. A handful of villagers gather around him, their faces a mix of curiosity and wariness. He unrolls a papyrus scroll and begins to read in a loud, officious voice. The words are complex, full of legal terms and references to the pharaoh's authority. He's announcing new tax assessments on grain yields, adjustments to labor quotas for state projects, and a reaffirmation of property laws. You listen, but the formal language is difficult to follow. The core message, however, comes through with chilling clarity. The demands of the state are absolute and non-negotiable. This is the long arm of the pharaoh, reaching directly into your dusty village. A large portion of the grain you painstakingly grew, harvested and ground, will be taken away to feed the armies, the priests and the vast bureaucracy in those distant, glittering cities you just daydreamed about. Your labor, your aching back, your blistered hands, a significant portion of it does not belong to you. It is a tax, a duty, a tithe to a god-king you will never see. The scribe's presence is a reminder that your life, your body, and your time are not entirely your own. You are a resource, a producer for the machine of the state. The laws he reads also clearly state that while you can own property in your own right, you are ultimately under the legal authority of your father or husband. Your autonomy is a limited one, defined and constrained by men and the state. Here's a little-known facet of the legal system. While women had more rights than in many ancient cultures, they could inherit, own and manage property. Their ability to advocate for themselves in legal disputes was often hampered by practicality. A man could travel to a regional court more easily. You, bound by domestic duties and the sheer physical difficulty of travel, often had to rely on a father, brother, or husband to speak for you, effectively filtering your voice through a man's interpretation. Historians still debate the real-world application of these laws for the average peasant woman. The written law might promise one thing, but the reality on the ground, far from the eyes of officials, was often dictated by local custom and the sheer power of patriarchy. The scribe rolls up his scroll, his duty done. He doesn't look at any of you. He simply moves on to the next village, leaving behind a heavier silence than before. The rules have been stated. The expectations are set. The grind now has a name, and it is Pharaoh. The scribe's words hang in the air like dust, a reminder of obligations that feel as heavy as the stones you grind. But a sharper, more immediate dread soon overshadows the distant demands of the state. A wave of sickness is moving through the village. It starts with the children, a fever that burns too bright, a cough that racks small bodies. Then it finds the adults. You watch your neighbor, a strong woman who was planting beside you yesterday, suddenly falter, her body racked with chills despite the heat. There is no word for plague, only fear and the certain belief that the gods are displeased. The air itself feels poisonous. This is not the slow, familiar drain of parasites. This is swift and terrifying. The local healers are overwhelmed. Their stores of honey and willow bark are depleted. Their chants and amulets seem powerless against this invisible onslaught. The only advice is isolation, but in a one-room home packed with family, isolation is a cruel joke. You can only watch and wait, praying the sickness passes over your door. The sense of helplessness is absolute. There is no understanding of germs, of contagion. The illness is a divine punishment, a capricious wind of fate. The only thing to do is try to keep the sick comfortable and hope their bodies are strong enough to fight it off. Many are not. The village is steeped in a quiet terror, punctuated by the sounds of coughing and the mournful wails of grief from another household that has lost its fight. And here's a terrifying reality historians have uncovered. These periodic outbreaks could devastate populations without any understanding of how diseases spread, without vaccines or effective treatments. A simple influenza or a more severe contagion could sweep through a community, killing the very young and the very old with ruthless efficiency. The mortality rates from such events were staggering, and recovery was a long, arduous process for those who survived, leaving them weakened and vulnerable to the next crisis. You huddle in your home, listening to the ragged breathing of your own family, every cough a potential death sentence. The state's taxes, the grinding stone, the heat, all of it fades into background noise against the primal fear of the invisible killer moving through your home. The gods have turned their faces away, and in the silence you hear only the sound of your own heart, pounding with a fear that is as ancient as it is profound. The wave of sickness finally recedes, leaving a village hollowed out and quiet. The air, once thick with fear, now hangs heavy with a grief too profound for words. Empty spaces at the grinding stones and in the fields tell the story more eloquently than any lament. Life, however unforgiving, must go on. The demands of the land and the state do not pause for mourning, but the loss changes the fabric of everything. A woman who once worked beside you is gone, and her absence is a constant aching void. Her children, if they survived, are now distributed among extended family, another mouth to feed for households already stretched to their breaking point. The village feels smaller, quieter, aged by the tragedy. In the aftermath, a different kind of work begins, the work of memory and the soul. There are no grand funerary rites for peasant farmers, no pyramids, no elaborate tombs, but there is a deep, stubborn belief in the afterlife, a conviction that this brutal existence cannot be all there is. Small, humble rituals are performed, a personal belonging, a favorite bead necklace. A simple clay pot might be buried with the body, a token for the journey into the West. The name of the deceased is spoken aloud by family members, a crucial act to ensure their memory, and thus their spirit, continues to exist in the next world. For you, this is the most terrifying aspect of death, not the pain of loss, but the thought of being forgotten, of your your life force, fading into nothingness because no one remains to say your name. Here's a poignant and often overlooked fact. The grand funerary practices we associate with ancient Egypt were the exclusive domain of the elite. For the vast majority of people, the afterlife was a more precarious and humble affair. Their Book of the Dead was not a written papyrus scroll, but the oral traditions and simple spells passed down through generations. Archaeologists find these simple burials at the edge of settlements, bodies curled in fetal positions facing west, surrounded by a few pathetic grave goods. Historians still debate how universal the belief in the elaborate afterlife actually was, or if for the common person it was a more vague hope, a desperate prayer against the finality of oblivion. You look at the fresh mound of earth at the desert's edge and whisper the name of your friend one more time, a small act of defiance against the silence. You ensure her memory lives, even if her body has returned to the dust. It is a somber duty, and it is the most important one you will perform all week. In the heavy silence after loss, a different sound emerges, not from a place of sorrow but from one of desperate, resilient life. The beat of a drum, the clatter of a sistrum, the high, clear sound of a voice singing a familiar hymn. The village, reeling from sickness, grasps for a ritual to cleanse the air, to plead with the gods, to simply feel something other than grief. A small festival for Hathor is hastily arranged. It's not the lavish affair of the cities. It's a raw, heartfelt plea for mercy. You join the other women, forming a line that moves together, clapping and swaying. The rhythm is simple, infectious. It gets into your bones, and for a few precious moments, it makes you forget the ache in your back, the hollow feeling in your stomach, the names of the lost. This is where you find a sliver of power. In the dance, in the music, you are not a peasant, a drudge, a grieving neighbor. You are a vessel for the goddess. Your body, usually a tool for labor, becomes a tool for ecstasy and connection. The music is a temporary escape, a collective catharsis that the harshness of daily life rarely affords. You sing until your throat is raw, dance until your feet are numb, pouring all your fear and hope into the sound. The children, those who are well, weave between the adults, their laughter a fragile, beautiful counterpoint to the solemn prayers. For a few hours the village is united not by shared labor, but by shared feeling. And here's a fascinating, often ignored truth. Music and dance were not mere entertainment. They were vital spiritual technologies, especially for women. The rattling sistrum was sacred to Hathor, its sound believed to appease deities and ward off evil spirits. The percussive clapping and stomping were thought to energize the gods and drive away negative forces. Historians studying iconography see women overwhelmingly depicted as the primary musicians and dancers in religious contexts. This wasn't a frivolous pastime. It was a critical ritual duty, one of the few areas where your actions had direct cosmic significance. As the last notes fade and the dust settles around the dancers, the normal quiet of the night feels different. Lighter, perhaps. The fear hasn't vanished, but it has been acknowledged, face down with rhythm and noise. You return to your home, your body thrumming with a different kind of exhaustion, a fleeting sense of peace woven into the weariness. The gods feel closer. Or perhaps just for a moment you felt stronger. The music fades, leaving a strange quiet in its wake. The collective energy dissipates, and the reality of your individual life settles back upon your shoulders, heavier for the brief reprieve. For you, this reality is defined by a contract you did not write. Your father has been in discussions with a man from the next village. The matter is simple, a marriage agreement. You've seen the boy once or twice. He seems strong, with kind enough eyes, but he is a stranger. Your feelings on the matter are irrelevant. This union is not about love or companionship. It is an economic and social transaction. Your labor, your fertility, and your future will be transferred from your father's household to your husband's. You are the currency. Your dowry is not gold or land. It is practical. A few extra pots, some woven baskets, perhaps a goat if your family is doing well. It is a pathetic pile of goods that represents your entire worth in this negotiation. There will be a small ceremony, some extra beer, exchange of vows spoken over you rather than to you. And then you will leave the only home you've ever known and go to a new village, to a new house, to a new family, who will judge your every move. Your primary duty will be clear. Produce children, preferably sons, to work the land and continue his name. Your value will be measured by your womb and your willingness to work until you break. Any failure to conceive will be your failure alone, a source of shame and potentially a reason for him to take another wife. Historians still debate the emotional landscapes of these arranged marriages. While legal documents show women had certain rights within marriage, they could own property and initiate divorce under specific conditions, the social pressure to conform was immense. Your world was small and your options were non-existent. The little-known fact is that for many women, marriage was less a partnership and more a relocation of servitude. You traded the authority of your father for the authority of your husband. Your life's purpose was narrowly defined by the expectations of others. As you watch the two men shake hands, sealing your fate, a cold knot forms in your stomach. It's not dread, exactly. It's a numb acceptance. This is the way it has always been. This is the way it will be. The music was an illusion of freedom. This handshake is the reality of your life. Time in a life like yours isn't measured in years, but in seasons of labor and loss. The years pass in a blur of grinding, planting, harvesting, and mourning. The young girl who once struggled with the grinding stone is now a woman whose body bears the map of that struggle. Knees that ache with the memory of endless bending, a back that protests at the first cool breeze of evening. Hands roughened and cracked beyond their years. You watch as your own children, those who survived the gauntlet of infancy, begin to take their place in the unending cycle. You teach your daughter the rhythm of the grinding stones, your heart aching with the knowledge of the life that awaits her. It is a bittersweet legacy. The village has changed around you. Some faces are gone, claimed by sickness or childbirth or simple time. New ones have appeared, but the rhythm remains the same. The inundation comes, the fields are planted, the sun beats down, the harvest is collected, the taxes are taken. Your own parents are gone now, buried in simple desert graves. You are the older generation now. Your knowledge of which herbs can ease a cough or how to best mend a fishing net has become valuable, sought after by the younger women. You have earned a sliver of respect, a quiet authority born solely from endurance. You have outlasted. It is a grim victory. And here's a historical reality often overshadowed by tales of kings and monuments. For the common woman, old age was not a reward. It was another form of vulnerability. Without a robust family to support you, you faced a precarious existence. There were no pensions, no retirement homes. Your value was in your labor, and as your strength faded, so did your security. Historians examining skeletal remains find evidence of severe arthritis, compressed vertebrae, and dental wear that speaks of a lifetime of brutal physical toil. You have survived, but your body is a testament to the cost of that survival. You are tired in a way that sleep cannot fix. The sun continues to rise and set on the Nile, indifferent to your weariness. The world moves forward, carried on the bent backs of women like you, who loved, labored, and were ultimately forgotten by everything but the dust. The sun continues its relentless journey across the sky, but its angle has changed. The light is softer, casting long shadows from the palm trees. The worst of the day's heat has passed, but the air remains warm, thick with the smell of dust, baking earth, and the faint, ever-present scent of the Nile. It's a smell so ingrained in your life you no longer notice it, the aroma of water, mud, fish, and the faint decay of vegetation. It is the smell of life itself and of death. It is the smell of home. You take a moment, just a single, stolen moment, to sit on a rough-hewn block of stone near your doorway. The weight of the day settles on you, a physical pressure. You can feel every grain of stone dust that has embedded itself in your skin, every ache in your muscles from bending over the fields. In this quiet moment, your mind isn't on prayers or tasks. It's simply empty. You watch the village children chasing a scraggly dog, their laughter a bright, sharp sound in the heavy air. You see the women beginning to prepare the evening meal, the smoke from their fires starting to curl into the darkening sky. This is the fragile tapestry of your world, threads of joy, struggle and relentless toil all woven together. And here's a simple, profound truth that often gets lost in the grand narratives of history. This was life. Not just survival, but life. There were moments of tenderness between mother and child, of shared laughter between friends grinding grain together, of quiet contentment in the shade after a long day. The human spirit then as now sought and found slivers of light even in the hardest of existences. Historians can map the patterns of labor, diet, and disease, but the quiet personal moments of connection and simple being are far harder to unearth from the sands of time. They are the ghosts of history, felt but not seen. As you sit there feeling the coolness of the stone through your thin linen dress, you're not a statistic. You are a person, breathing, feeling, enduring. The world is harsh, but in this moment it is also still. And for now that is enough. You close your eyes not to sleep, but just to be. The Nile flows on. The sun sinks lower. Another day is almost done. That moment of quiet is shattered by a sound that chills your blood more deeply than any ghost story. The high, frantic wail of a mother. It's a sound you know in your soul, one that speaks of a terror beyond words. You push yourself up from the stone, your body protesting, and follow the sound to a nearby dwelling. Inside, a young woman you know, Kia, barely more than a girl herself, is clutching her toddler son. His little body is rigid, his eyes rolled back in his head, limbs jerking in violent, uncontrolled spasms. A fever fit. The air is thick with her panic. Old Merit is there, her face grave. She murmurs prayers to Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess of childbirth and protection, and tries to gently pry the boy from his mother's arms. There are no doctors for this. No medicines to stop the seizure. There is only ritual and desperate hope. Merit sprinkles water over the child, a blessing and a futile attempt to cool his burning skin. She places a small amulet of Bez, the dwarf god who wards off evil spirits, on his chest. Kia is sobbing, her prayers a frantic, broken stream. You can only stand by, your own heart hammering against your ribs, feeling utterly useless. This is the helplessness that underpins every moment of joy. A child can be laughing one moment and fighting for his life the next. The line is that thin. The seizure seems to last forever, a horrifying spectacle of a small body at war with itself, before finally, blessedly, the convulsions stop. The boy goes limp, unconscious, his breathing shallow and ragged. He has survived this round, but the fever still burns. The battle is not over. Here's a medical horror rarely discussed. Conditions like epilepsy or severe febrile seizures were utterly incomprehensible. They were seen as the work of evil spirits or the wrath of a god. The treatments were spiritual, not medical. Historians studying medical papyri find spells and incantations for such ailments far outnumber practical remedies. The survival of a child was often attributed to the strength of the amulet or the favor of the god, not the resilience of his own body. You put a hand on Kia's shaking shoulder, a gesture of shared fear and solidarity. There are no words of comfort that hold any weight. You simply stand witness to the terror, hoping the gods are listening tonight. The quiet of the evening is now filled with a different, more profound silence, the silence of waiting, of dread, of a mother's vigil over a child who may not see the dawn. The vigil lasts through the night. The only sounds are Kia's soft weeping, the crackle of the oil lamp, and the child's ragged, too-fast breathing. You stay with her, because to leave would be unthinkable. This is what women do. You share the burden of fear, your silent presence a small anchor in her storm of terror. As the first grey light of dawn filters through the door, the fever finally breaks. The boy's skin cools to the touch, and he slips into a deep, natural sleep. Exhaustion replaces panic. The immediate danger has passed. He will live. The relief is so potent it feels like a physical thing, washing over the small room, but it is a tempered relief. These battles leave scars. The child may be left with weakness or a trembling hand, a reminder of the night his spirit was almost stolen. For Kia, the memory of those violent spasms will never truly fade. It will live in the back of her mind, a constant low-level hum of anxiety every time he feels warm to the touch. You leave them as the sun rises, returning to your own home. The lack of sleep makes the world feel fuzzy at the edges, unreal. Your own tasks await, the grinding stone, the water jars, the endless cycle of labor. But today it feels different. The memory of the child's seizing body casts a pall over everything. Your movements are slower, more deliberate. You check on your own children more frequently, your hand lingering on their brows. The fragility of it all is suddenly painfully vivid. Life here is not just hard work. It is a precarious balancing act on the edge of a cliff. A single misstep, a random fever, a bad fish, and everything can crumble. Historians can quantify the high infant mortality rates, but they can seldom capture the emotional toll, the constant, grinding anxiety that was the background noise of motherhood. It was a weight carried by every woman, a shared understanding that love was inextricably linked to the potential for devastating loss. This was perhaps the harshest reality of all. To love fiercely in a world where you had so little power to protect what you loved. As you lift the grinding stone, your arms feel heavier than ever before. You are not just grinding grain, you are grinding out a life in the face of unimaginable vulnerability. Each rotation of the stone is a prayer, a plea for continued survival, for one more day of fragile, precious normalcy. The memory of the child's fever lingers like a ghost, a reminder of how little control you truly have. In a world ruled by unseen forces, gods, spirits, and imbalances of the body, you grasp for any form of protection you can find. It's not just about amulets and prayers to the major gods. The air is thick with smaller, more personal superstitions, a complex web of do's and don'ts designed to ward off misfortune. An itch on your left palm might mean grain will be expensive this season. A black cat crossing your path requires a specific spell muttered under your breath. You avoid pointing at the moon, lest you invite a curse upon your family. These aren't silly beliefs. They are a vital coping mechanism, a way to impose a sense of order on a chaotic and terrifying world. Your personal armor is the jewelry you wear, not gold or silver, but charms of power. Their blue faience widget eye amulet, strung on a leather cord around your neck to deflect the evil eye. Thy tiny clay figurine of the household god Bez, his grotesque face meant to frighten away demons that might cause nightmares or harm children. These aren't decorations. They are essential equipment for daily survival, as important as your grinding stone or your water jar. You touch them throughout the day, a nervous habit, a quick plea for continued safety. Their power is in your belief, and you believe fiercely, because the alternative, that there is no protection at all, is too terrifying to contemplate. And here's a fascinating layer to this. While the state religion focused on the great gods like Ra and Osiris, the day-to-day spiritual life of common people, especially women, was often centered around these domestic deities and personal superstitions. It was a more intimate, more immediate form of faith. Historians find evidence of this in the sheer volume of amulets in archaeological digs and from texts detailing household spells. It was a parallel spiritual world, one where you had a direct line to the divine forces that affected your immediate, tangible life, health, fertility, and protection of the home. So as you go about your work, your fingers absently trace the familiar shape of your amulet. You are not just a laborer. You are a warrior in an unseen battle, armed with faith and clay, fighting for the survival of your family against forces you cannot see or understand. The physical grind is only half the struggle. The heat of the day begins to soften, but a new kind of tension tightens the air. A dry, gritty wind blowing in from the west. It starts as a whisper, stirring up dust devils in the alleys between houses. Then it grows, howling around the corners of your home, carrying with it the fine, abrasive sand of the endless desert. This is the kamsin, a wind that scorches everything it touches. You quickly secure a piece of thin linen over your nose and mouth, but it's a feeble defense. The sand finds its way in, stinging your eyes, grating between your teeth, coating every surface in a fine, pale layer. The world outside vanishes behind a swirling ochre curtain. Inside your home, the air is stifling. You've sealed the door and single window as best you can with rags, but the dust still seeps through. A constant, invasive presence. The light from the oil lamp is dimmed by the haze. There is nothing to do but wait it out, huddled with your family, listening to the demonic wail of the wind. It can last for days. It steals your breath, parches your throat, and strains already scarce water supplies. The sand invades your food, your bedding, your lungs. It's a periodic reminder that just beyond the narrow, fertile strip of the Nile lies a vast, hungry emptiness that is always waiting to reclaim the land. The desert is patient. It can afford to wait. Here's an environmental battle rarely highlighted. The constant grinding war against the desert was a daily reality. The kamsin wasn't just an inconvenience. It could damage crops, erode soil, and cause respiratory illnesses that weakened an already vulnerable population. Historians studying sediment layers and climate data can trace these ancient dust storms, but it's harder to capture the psychological toll, the feeling of being besieged in your own home by an invisible, suffocating enemy. As you sit in the dusty gloom, a child coughing beside you, you understand the deep-seated Egyptian fear of chaos, of Isfet. The ordered, life-giving world of the Nile was a fragile victory, and the desert wind was the voice of the formless void, constantly trying to snuff it out. Your existence was an act of defiance, a stubborn stand against the sand, but in storms like this, it hardly feels like you're winning. The howling wind finally dies down, leaving an eerie, settled silence in its wake. The air inside your home is still thick with dust, every surface blanketed in a fine, gritty layer. The cleanup is a monumental task in itself, adding hours of extra, thankless labor to an already exhausting day. But as you step outside, coughing in the hazy air, you see the village coming together. This is not a time for individual households. The storm's aftermath demands collective action. The sand has drifted against walls, partially blocked irrigation channels, and buried precious garden plots. Everyone must help dig out. You join a line of women using simple wooden scoops and pots to clear the vital waterways. There are no complaints, only a weary shared purpose. Your neighbor, whose child survived the fever, works beside you, her movements slow but determined. This is the other side of village life, not just shared fear but shared resilience. The social fabric, woven from countless moments like this, is what truly holds your world together. You rely on each other because you have no one else to rely on. A family whose roof has been damaged will be helped by others. Tools are shared. News is exchanged in low murmurs as you work. It's a network of mutual obligation and quiet support, the invisible structure that makes survival possible. And here's a crucial, often overlooked aspect of this society. While the state demanded taxes and labor, the actual day-to-day survival was managed through these informal, community-based systems. There was no social safety net from the pharaoh. Your safety net was your neighbor. Historians see evidence of this in the way villages were organized and in texts that speak of communal labor projects. This reliance created powerful bonds, but also immense social pressure to conform and contribute. To be ostracized from this network was a fate almost worse than death. As you pass a heavy pot of sand down the line, your hands brushing against the hands of the woman next to you, you feel that connection. It is a tangible thing, as real as the sand you're moving. It is exhausting, but it is also in its own way sustaining. The desert tried to bury you, but together you are digging yourselves out. One pot of sand at a time. As the last of the storm's sand is cleared from the irrigation ditch, a different kind of energy begins to thrum through the village. It's a nervous, anticipatory buzz. The hottest weeks of the year are pressing down, and the Nile sits at its lowest point, a lazy, shrunken brown ribbon in its wide bed. The land is parched, cracking under the sun's fury. The stored grain is running low and meals become even more meager, the stews thinner, the hunger pangs sharper. This is the time of year when faith is tested, when the gods feel most distant. Every eye is turned toward the river. Every prayer is a whispered plea for the life-giving flood. The annual inundation is not just a natural event. It is the pivotal moment upon which all of life hinges. Rumors fly like the vanished sand. A trader says the river is rising far to the south. A farmer swears he saw the star Sirius, Sopdet, rise just before the sun, the heavenly signal that the flood is coming. Hope and fear are tangled together. A good flood means fertile soil and a bountiful harvest. A poor flood means famine, starvation, and death. There is nothing you can do but wait and watch and hope. The tension is a physical thing, a tightness in every chest. The grinding of grain becomes a prayer. The planting of the last seeds is an act of desperate optimism. You find yourself making extra offerings at the household shrine, your prayers more fervent, your promises to the gods more extravagant. Your survival, and the survival of everyone you know, depends on the whims of a river. Here's a little-known fact about the inundation. While it was predictable in its annual cycle, its scale was wildly unpredictable. The height of the flood was everything. Too low, and the fields wouldn't be properly fertilized or watered. Too high, and villages could be washed away, drowning people and destroying homes. The state sent scribes to measure the flood levels with nilometers, but that information was for the pharaoh's tax assessors, not for you. Your measurement was the look in the eyes of the older farmers, the level of the water against a familiar rock. Historians can study ancient records of flood levels, but they can't capture the gut-wrenching anxiety of an entire population waiting for the water to rise. You stand at the river's edge, watching the sluggish current, your fate flowing toward you from distant, mysterious highlands you will never see. The entire kingdom holds its breath. Then it happens. A shout goes up from the riverbank. Then another. You drop the grinding stone mid-stroke and run, joining the stream of villagers rushing toward the Nile. At first you see nothing but the same tired brown water. But then you notice it. A change in the current, a new energy in the flow. And then you see it. A faint dark tinge to the water, like a shadow moving beneath the surface. It's the first sign. The water isn't just rising. It's changing. It's carrying the gift of the highlands, the rich black silt that will transform the barren, cracked fields into a paradise of fertility. The flood is coming. A wave of pure, unadulterated relief washes over the crowd. It's a physical sensation, like a cool breeze on sunburned skin. Laughter breaks out, a sound that had become rare in the anxious preceding weeks. There are tears of joy. The prayers worked. The gods have listened. The frantic energy of fear transforms into the purposeful energy of preparation. The next few days will be a whirlwind of controlled chaos. You will help move livestock to higher ground, secure belongings, and watch as the life-giving water slowly, inexorably, begins to spread over the waiting land. The air itself smells different, damp, fertile, and charged with promise. The hunger, the fear, the dust, all of it is momentarily forgotten, washed away by the hope the dark water brings. And here's a fascinating hydrological fact. The red Nile of the low water period and the black Nile of the flood weren't just different colors. They were different chemical and biological entities. The floodwaters carried not just silt, but nutrients and minerals that replenished the soil in a way modern fertilizers still struggle to replicate perfectly. This natural annual renewal was the absolute bedrock of Egyptian civilization. Historians can measure the silt layers and track flood levels, but they can only imagine the collective sigh of relief from millions of people when that dark water finally appeared. It was the ultimate validation of their faith, their culture, and their entire way of life. As you stand there watching the river transform, you feel a connection to every farmer, every mother, every soul who has ever stood on this bank and prayed for this exact moment. The wait is over. The river has given its answer. Life can begin again. The days that follow are a blur of muddy, joyous activity. The world is reborn in water. The Nile doesn't just rise. It sprawls, claiming the land in a slow, deliberate conquest. The desert's edge recedes, and your world becomes a shallow, silty lake, punctuated by the islands of higher ground where the village stands. The air hums with new sounds, the squelch of mud, the croaking of countless frogs emerging to celebrate the deluge, the shouts of children splashing in the newly formed shallows. The oppressive heat breaks, replaced by a damp, fertile coolness. The smell of wet earth is the smell of life itself, of future bread and full bellies. But this is not a time of rest. The floodwaters are a temporary gift and they must be managed. You join the teams of villagers, men and women together, working to control the flow. You help reinforce the mud brick dikes and channels that will direct the water to the fields and then drain it away at the right time. You're up to your knees in the rich black silt, your hands caked in the cold, promising muck. It's hard physical labor, but it feels entirely different from the grinding despair of the dry season. Every shovelful of mud, every repaired breach in a canal is an investment in the future. You are not just working for today. You are building the foundation for the next harvest, for the next year of life. The work is communal, urgent, and filled with a sense of shared purpose that borders on celebration. Here's an engineering marvel often credited solely to the state. While the Pharaoh's officials planned large-scale irrigation projects, the day-to-day management of the floodwaters, the maintenance of canals, dikes and basins was the responsibility of the local communities. This was hands-on, traditional knowledge passed down through generations. Your understanding of the land's subtle contours, of how water would flow and where it would pool, was every bit as crucial as any royal decree. Historians still uncover the remnants of these ancient local water management systems, a testament to the collective intelligence and effort of ordinary people like you. As you pat the last section of a dike into place, your body tired but your spirit lighter, you look out over the transformed landscape. The desert has been pushed back. Life has returned. The uncertainty is over. For now, the frantic work of managing the floodwaters gradually slows. The Nile, having delivered its gift, begins its slow retreat, leaving behind a world transformed. The cracked pale earth is now a vast expanse of deep, wet black soil, shining under the sun like dark glass. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. This rich new land is soft under your bare feet, cool and promising. The air is still heavy with moisture, and the scent of life and decay. A potent smell that means full granaries and full bellies. A profound sense of peace settles over the village. The desperate anxiety of the low Nile is a memory washed away. For these few weeks, the world feels generous, abundant, and kind. You stand at the edge of a field, the black silt oozing between your toes. The work ahead is still immense. The sowing will begin soon, but it is work filled with hope, not dread. You see the same quiet relief on every face. The children's laughter seems louder, the conversations lighter. The shared struggle has forged a deeper bond. You have all faced the fear of scarcity and emerged into plenty. In this moment, you are not a drudge, a peasant, a statistic. You are a vital part of an ancient, miraculous cycle. Your hands, though rough and worn, will help coax the food of an empire from this mud. Your resilience is the true monument, though it will never be carved in stone. And as the light begins to soften, painting the wet fields in shades of gold and orange, you feel a connection that runs deeper than the river. You are a single thread in a tapestry woven over thousands of years, a story of women who ground the grain, who prayed for the flood, who endured. Your name may be lost, your individual struggles forgotten by history, but your essence is in the very soil of Egypt. It is a legacy written not on papyrus, but in the resilience of the human spirit. The sun dips below the horizon, and the first stars appear, reflected in the countless pools of water left by the receding Nile. The world is quiet, full, and at peace. You take a deep breath of the cool, damp air, and for now it is enough. Now let your breath slow to match the quiet rhythm of this ancient land. Let the images of the shining black fields soften and blur at the edges. The journey is over. The Nile has given its gift. The story is complete. May the peace of the flood settle in your own heart, a reminder that after every season of struggle, there can be a moment of quiet abundance. Rest now in the knowledge that you have witnessed the unbreakable cycle of life itself. End of script. Sweet dreams.